Welcome to Read Ancient Languages. I'm Dr. Fausto Labruto. Today we take a trip to Hollywood to discuss a thriller movie from 1999 starring Patricia Arquette and Gabriel Byrne called Stigmata. This movie is about a conspiracy theory. Apparently there's been a discovery of an ancient Aramaic manuscript which turns out to be an apocryphal gospel containing sayings of Jesus. And one of the sayings is considered dangerous by the Catholic Church, which think it could undermine the power, and therefore they try to kill anyone who is attempting to translate or divulge the apocryphal gospel. Now, this is obviously a work of fiction, but the reason why I, as an expert in ancient languages, I'm interested in this movie is because the authors decided to use sentences, texts which are taken from a real apocryphal gospel, the Gospel of Thomas. And moreover, at the end of the movie, just before the end credits, the Gospel of Thomas is quoted as being a gospel which the church has tried to hide. So what are these words that the conspiracy theorists believed the church would try to hide? This is the passage. It's a saying from Jesus. The kingdom of God is inside you and all around you, not in buildings of wood or stone. Split a piece of wood and I am there. Lift a stone and I am there. When I watched this movie, I immediately reacted to these words because they are partially a conflation of texts from the Gospel of Thomas. However, as we will see in a moment, the choice of this passage was not wise, because of all the sayings of Jesus included in the Gospel of Thomas, this is actually one of the least controversial. In order to clarify this, let's take a step back and let's talk about the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas is real, it exists, it's an apocryphal gospel. That means it is a gospel which, differently from the canonical gospel, did not make it to the New Testament. It was considered apocryphal and heretical already by the 3rd century. And it is one of the reasons why we did not have any extant copy of this gospel until very recent times. In 1945, when a full copy of the gospel was discovered buried underground in a town in Egypt called Nag Hammadi in 1945. It is written in Coptic, which is a late stage of evolution of ancient Egyptian language. However, scholars have been able to determine that the original text, which we do not have in full, was in ancient Greek. Ancient Greek is the same language in which the canonical Gospels were written. The main characteristic of the Gospel of Thomas is that, differently from the canonical Gospel, which include a narration of the acts of Jesus and the apostles, together with the sayings of Jesus, the Gospel of Thomas includes only sayings of Jesus or of its apostles. So there is no narration, and in particular there is no narration of the passion and resurrection of Christ. So if we look at one of the sayings, there are 114 in total. The saying number 3 in Coptic reads Tementeros emempeten hun, aos emempeten Baal, which translates as the kingdom of God is within you and around you. Actually, the final word of the original Coptic text, Baal, means eye. Around the eye is an expression in Coptic which is aptly translated as around you. And this is part of the quote that was cited in the movie Stigmata, and that was considered to be dangerous by the church according to this work of fiction. However, if you are familiar with the canonical gospel, you will probably know that in Luke chapter 7:21, Jesus say, the kingdom of God is within you. I'm using the King James Bible translation. So of all the sayings included in the Gospel of Thomas, the authors of the movie Stigmata actually chose one which is cannot be considered controversial because it's found in the Gospel of Luke. The other part of the text, according to the movie, comes from a different saying of the Gospel of Thomas. It's saying number 77, which reads, Pohen nushe anoktem mao, fiem pone rai, hau tetna heroe mao, which means, split a piece of wood and I will be there, turn a stone and you will find me there, exactly as in the movie. In the movie, to add theatrical effect to these quotes, in between these two quotes, the author included something to the effect of not finding a God in buildings of stone or wood. This quote cannot be found in the Gospel of Thomas. Now, I don't find these sentences controversial at all, and I don't see how they would create a scandal to the Catholic Church. The first sentence, as we see, is found in Luke and is worth taking a closer look at. If you're familiar with the canonical Gospel, you will know that in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus describes the kingdom of God as something that will come in the future. Something that we must prepare for. We don't know when it will come in the future. Whereas in the Gospel of Luke, which was written much later, Jesus teaches that the arrival of the kingdom of God has already started with him. And thus the sentence, the kingdom of God is within you. It is a sentence which invites the reader at finding peace with themselves and prepare for a conjunction or the experience of the divine. I realize that this sentence is very suitable for the Gnostic tradition of the Gospel of Thomas. However, it is fully, and it was from the beginning, fully accepted by Catholic Orthodoxy. As for the other saying 77, the authors of the movie Stigmata hypothesized that this sentence could invite the believer to find God around them and the world around them and not in the church. That is why they felt forced to add the sentence that the kingdom should not be sought in a building of stone or wood. This is a very long stretch. After all, there are several examples in the Gospels, I mean in the canonical Gospels, especially in John, in which Jesus' followers are made aware that the power of God is all around them. And therefore it is the Catholic Orthodoxy is fully in tune with this sentence that God would be found turning a stone or splitting a piece of wood, although these words they are not exactly reported in the canonical Gospels. Therefore, the movie Stigmata in pure Hollywood fashion just tried to spectacularize the existence of some apocryphal Gospels and use some of its contents in a hugely misleading way. However, this gives me the opportunity of further discussing the origin of the Gospels, both apocryphal and canonical. How is it possible that a saying in Thomas, which is apocryphal, is identical to a saying in a canonical Gospel such as Luke? The reason for this is to be sought in the fascinating origin of the canonical Gospels and Thomas. This image summarizes one of the most widely accepted theories on the origin of the Gospels. It's called the two-source hypothesis. According to this hypothesis, in the very earliest days of Christianity, there were two texts which reported the acts and sayings of Jesus. They were the Gospel of Mark and a text which we refer to with the letter Q, which stands for Quelle, which is a German word for source. As we know from the New Testament, the Gospel of Mark is mainly a narration of the acts of Jesus and to a lesser extent of his sayings, Whereas research tells us that Quelle, the original source of which we have no extant copy, was largely a compilation of sayings of Jesus. According to this hypothesis, the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, which are synoptic to Mark, have taken a large portion of their contents, the one in purple, from the acts and sayings of Jesus described in Mark. But they have also taken a substantial portion of Quelle in the sayings which are found in Matthew and Luke, but not in Mark. There is also a smaller component of own content in both Matthew and Luke, which are different from each other. According to the same theory, Thomas fits well in this diagram, because as it is a gospel which is entirely composed with sayings, it would have taken the majority of its sayings from Q, however, with some own content. This does two things. One, it explains why some of the sayings which are found in the Gospel of Thomas are found also in Luke or Matthew, and there are many examples. The other is that it probably implies that Thomas was written at a very early stage, because it took all of its contents from Q and was not influenced by Matthew or Luke. So, in conclusion, the thriller movie Stigmata, with its conspiracy theory about the Catholic Church, tends to spectacularize and create a controversy out of something that is not controversial at all. It is well established that some of the contents of the Gospel of Thomas, including those which are partially quoted in the movie, are found in the canonical Gospel, which are accepted by the Catholic Church since the beginning. And the Gospel of Thomas, far from being a hidden document, is a very interesting text which has contributed to our understanding of the roots of the Synoptic Gospels. Today, the only extant copy of the Coptic Gospel of Thomas can be admired at the Coptic Museum in Cairo, Egypt. As for the movie Stigmata, if you really feel like you want to watch it, it's probably available on Netflix. Thank you for listening to Read Ancient Languages. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook or Instagram for updates.